Good morning and welcome back to Planner Craft. It's been a while, so welcome back. And today we're going to be doing a little bit of scrapbooking. So I'm just going to wait for everybody to join us. Good morning, Deb. And I hope you're well. So if you have any questions as we go through this morning, there's about a 30-second delay between you asking and me being able to reply. So just be aware that when you are typing questions, be nice and thorough. And then I can answer them nice and easily. So today I'm using my notebook. So if you haven't seen this before, it's this one. So it's a Go Create notebook. Yay, mine. And I've created a project, so I've done a sketch with the different layers, I've done notes and also notes on how to put it together. So without too much further ado, I'm just waiting to make sure that we are going live across everywhere. Hopefully Mum's found me on YouTube. Don't be afraid to say hi and let me know that you're watching and that you can hear me okay. It's always a bit more temperamental after time off. So we're going to be doing a grid layout. Now with your grid layout here, you can use all the same frame if you want to. I'm just going to give you one look. Or if you want to mix up your frames, you can do. It just changes slightly how you're going to put it together. So if you're going to do them all the same, you're going to be able to just basically use basic aperture inside to do your background piece. Good morning, Anne. So hopefully you're having pleasant weather in Australia. I know you guys are starting to head towards autumn. Bit interesting here. So we've got really cloudy skies, but then the sun comes through and it's really bright, so you're going to notice that the light goes a lot today. So I do apologise for that. I have got filling lights, but you're still going to have a bit of variation. Okay, so let's go to the machine. So on the SDX range, you've got quite a few different frames. Even on the CM, you should find some of these actually on your machine. So if you don't like the frames on your machine, you can use and import other frames from places like Design Bundles or Creative Fabrica or Love SVG, so that you can use those for this same approach. And we're going to focus mainly on these first ones. So 23 round to about 29 are going to be really useful for this particular project. You want your apertures to be pretty similar, but they don't have to be identical. Now if you look at ARK025 over here on the right hand side, you're going to see that that's got a bit of a shaped aperture. Ideally, as you're getting started, you are going to want to kind of keep it nice and simple. So you're going to find it much easier to use things like 23, 24 as opposed to 25. Good morning, Linda. Okay, so I'm not sure if my viewer figures are quite right, but I will go on the basis that they are. So feel free to share this out. It's not currently going out to the group automatically, so if you want to push it out there, you can do. And let's put in our first frame. So I'm going to start off with number 23, and I've worked out that roughly I need to have a frame that's about 2.5 by 3 inches. So in millimeters, that would be 65 by 75 very roughly. So the larger number is our height, so that's going to come down to 75, and we're going to see that our width is at 60. Now, because of the type of detail that we've got around the outside of the frame, I won't recommend trying to alter that ratio any, because otherwise you're going to have like a distortion in your outer design. Good morning, Vanessa from South Africa. And hi, Mum. It's Mum's birthday today. So happy birthday, Mummy. So I'm going to go okay and add that to my mat. So there's our first frame. Now I'm going to be doing lots of work in threes for this particular design. So if we go to our frame, we can duplicate it so that we have 3. And I'm just going to roughly lay those out on my mat. We can sort out the layout in a minute. We're going to go OK. OK again. We're going to add a different frame. So we're going to go back to pattern, pattern, into our shapes, into our frames. We're going to scroll down. And this time let's go for, let's go for 27. So this has a bit of a narrower frame, but obviously at the moment it's also sideways, so I'm going to want this kind of rotated around. So with that in mind, our width this time is going to be 75. And we can go OK, and we're going to add that on. Now because I'm going to do that rotation, there's no point me saying that I want 3 of those at this point, and that can add to the mat. We're going to bring that to the middle, go to Edit, Object Edit, Rotate 90 degrees to bring it vertically, go OK, and then we can do our duplicate. Now I'm not too worried at this particular moment in time about necessarily getting those nesting nice and neatly. So we need finally one more frame. And as I said before, if you want to do all these identical, you can do. You don't have to mix and match like I'm doing. And I think it'd be really cool to do like an oval shaped frame, so we've got a bit of a difference. So let's go for that one. Okay. And again, it's landscape, so we're going to take our width to that 75. Now, if you notice at this point, it's starting to go so that it's really narrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that up just a little bit, and we're going to go OK. OK. And set that onto the mat. I'm going to go to Edit, Object Edit, Rotate, so that it's up the right way first of all. And we've got these 2 little brad holes at the top and bottom. So what we wanted to do is actually take those kind of and stretch them so that we've got a bit more width in here, and compact it down so that it's more like this kind of format. So if we're going to resize, you're going to see that actually you can't do that yet because it's greyed out. So we're going to go OK. And you look at it and you think, well, it's not grouped, so I can't ungroup it. So how can I fix that? So if I go to Offset, and I take it down as low as it can go, so I'm going to go to 1 mil. I'm going to go OK. That's put a 1 mil offset all the way around each element of that shape. So I'm going to move that out of the way. So there's our original design with the red box around it. Then when we come back here, our offset shape, we can see it's grouped. So now we can treat that as a group, or if we want to get to an individual element, we can actually ungroup it and just get to, say, the aperture in the middle. Now that's going to be a useful method of working when it comes to doing our background piece. So that's a good one to learn. So basically do an offset so that you can get to your individual elements. Now if you wanted to, you could do an offset back that 1mm so it's the same size as your original frame. So we can go offset. We went 1mm out, so we're going to go 1mm back in. Now, if we do that, you're going to see it actually looks like it gets smaller. And that's because at the moment, instead of seeing it as a frame, it's seeing it as a group of shapes. So I want to go and actually put that 1mm in the positive. So we're going to go OK. And that's our offset group, the first one we did, and our second offset group is just there. So now we can go into resize, and you can see our ratio button is now blue. So we can tap that one. This means that we can alter our height and our width independently. So our height we want at about 75. And we want our width at about 65. So I'm just going to take that up alongside our frames so we can kind of judge how they're going to look when they're all on a grid. And I think that probably looks pretty close to where I want it to be. So I'm going to go OK. And we can duplicate that one so that we have 3. I'm going to go OK. And click on that one and delete it. And delete that one. Yeah, it is clever, Vanessa, because basically that means that any shape that you have that is complex, you can actually still manage to go in and ungroup, even if the machine thinks it won't let you. Okay, so I'm quite happy with those. I'm going to go OK again. Now we've got this little function down here, which is how we save our material. So if we click on that one, you've got 3 options. So your top one is really good for irregular shapes, and the idea is it's going to place it so that you save as much material as possible. The next one is going to keep everything in its original angle, and again it's going to place it so that you're saving as much material. So we've gone from having, you know, the equivalent of 3 rows of shapes, and it's just gone, well actually if you offset that one there, we can get it down to 2. Or the last one just basically puts them as straight lines. So morning Carol. So for those of you that are late joining us, we're doing a scrapbook layout based on a grid. So the grid is basically 9 frames, so a 3x3 grid. And we're going to start by cutting our frames first. So with all those pieces done, let's get those cutting. So let's quickly switch back overhead. So I've planned it all out in my notebook, I've been good. I have to get a new one soon though. Okay. So, brand new mat, so just be aware of that when, if you are starting a new mat, that it's going to be ultra sticky. So I won't need to press my card down very much. For these frames I'm going to be using some self-adhesive cardstock. So this has a lovely texture to it, and you can get this from Graphtec in the UK. Okay. And I'm going to put my little cut section to the bottom of the mat. You still got your sore shoulder. Oh dear. I bet it was that naughty shed. So, let's go back. Close come. So I'm going to go okay at that because I'm happy with that layout. I'm going to load in my mat. Come. There we go. Not heard of self-adhesive cardstock. Does it have double-sided on the back? Yes, it does. So it's literally has adhesive as if it was a piece of vinyl, but it's a piece of card. So it's useful for where you want to layer up decorative elements like these frames, or if you have a design which is really delicate and intricate, then going self-adhesive is a really good idea, as you don't have to oh, not the shed. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Carol. I've been in pain this week. It's not good. Not good. I go around smelling a deep heat everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to go, okay. I'm going to go to cut. Now in terms of blades, with these designs they are pretty simple by comparison to some of the designs that we do. So I'm going to go and pop in my black standard auto blade rather than the vinyl one. Now you could half cut this so that you just end up taking up the first layer of the card, and that's useful if you're going to be doing something where you want to pick up the alignment with transfer tape, because you can still use transfer tape on your adhesive cardstock. But for this particular project, I think for me it's just as easy that it cuts all the way through, and then I can trim off the excess the same way that I did down the bottom. So in terms of cut pressure, I'm just going to drop that back down. So it's getting to the point where I need a new blade. It gets a lot of use, does my ScanNCut. So let's go for that and try it. So when you buy the pack of adhesive cardstock, it comes in lots of different colours. Did we enjoy the week off, or were we designing the workshop again? Oh, Carol, you know us so well. I was poorly for the first half of it, like great timing. So that was clearly enough for my birthday, I have to say. And then we did actually get out and about in the second half of the week until, yes, we then decided that we were going to try and sort out the junk, shall I put it. So we had a good clear out, and there's still loads left to do. But we are going to be donating quite a bit of craft stuff to our local charity shop. And we gave a load at Christmas to the craft club round the corner as well. So it's funny, isn't it, how your taste changes, you keep crafting. Things that I do now, I don't think I would have done 20 years ago when I started. My birthday was really sunny, and it was like I really want to be outside taking photos. I don't want to be in the house feeling a bit rough. video a couple of fun things later in the week. And the pre-order for the Foil Shield set 2 is progressing well, and those should hopefully be heading out Monday. So a little bit later because I was poorly, but it'll be okay. So we're nearly there, just the last frame to do, I think. Then what we're going to do is work on the background, so we're going to be creating our grid layout for all these elements to stick to. Okay. So I'm going to go OK. Going to unload my map and let's pop overhead. Can peel these off. Now all the inner apertures for your frames you can use on something else, so don't throw them away. The little tiny ovals you can obviously get rid because the chances of using those are pretty slim, but okay. So when it comes to removing things like this off the mat, you're better off using a metal spatula so that you can actually get underneath, because you want to make sure that you take both the card and the backing. Okay, so I kind of do myself like two piles, so the one that is what I'm actually using in the project at the moment, and then one which is bits that I can use later, and anything else can go straight in the bin. The thinner the frame, you want to go a bit more careful with when removing. And if any are being particularly difficult, turn your mat over and actually curl the mat backwards instead of your card, and your pieces will come off a lot flatter. So if you miss your backing, it's a bit of a nightmare to try and realign it, but let's just pop that on there. There we go. In terms of knowing when your blade is ready for replacement, if you're finding that you are consistently getting snagging at a pressure which you wouldn't normally do, then it can be a sign that it's starting to get a little bit blunt. and it's always a good idea to have a spare to hand. Okay, so with our frames all kind of separated out, we're ready to do our background bit. So let's pop back to the machine. Okay, yeah, I won't repeat that in case Bella hears then, Carol. So I'm going to go back. Now, because I've used different frames, I'm going to work with the frames themselves. If your frames are all identical, you can just use the apertures instead. We're going to use our align function, and we're going to use the whole of our mat. So whereas before we wanted it all kind of kept up to this top edge, and using minimum amount of the actual material, this time we're going to stretch it out. So what I want to do is have a mixture of frames per element type. So if I pop back overhead for just a moment, in my sketch, sorry Carol, in my sketch you can see that I've actually noted what content is going into each frame. So we've got photos here, pattern papers here, solid here. Now what you want to also do is mix your frames up between those elements. So what you want to do is have the same frame go down that way and so on and so forth. So we're going to pick one of each. Now I'm only going to do this very roughly to start with because we want to use a line to fix our grid. So that one is going to go right into the middle. So I've used the cross line on the, I didn't change back, did I? Absolutely nasty. There we go. So we use the cross line here for the middle reference. So then I've got the scallop frame down to that bottom right. And then we're going to want one of these frames up to the top left. Then process of elimination, I'm going to pop that scallop frame just there. So the oval frame is on the right. Then again we're going to have our, like, what can I call that one? The swirly frame. Just there. Swirly frame down the bottom. We're going to want the oval frame bottom left and the scallop frame middle left, like so. So these are all placed really roughly at the moment, and if you like that kind of haphazard look, then you can go ahead with that. But I wanted to show you how you can actually use your align and distribute to actually tidy everything up so that you get a nice grid. So we're going to go to edit, and we're going to go to multi-select, and we're going to do it row by row. So if we tap on each of those, we can start off by building the cross in the middle. Now bear in mind that when we come to do our distribute, the one that's going to move is the one that is actually in the middle already. So that is going to move, and you're going to want to realign that as a group in a minute. So before you think that you've done something wrong, it's not. That's absolutely fine too. So we're going to go into align. And first of all, let's try and get these in some kind of levelness. So we're going to align it to the center so that we have a nice straight line running horizontally through our shapes. We can then use distribute space, and that's going to move that middle one. So basically what that's done is it's equaled up the spaces between the shapes. So hopefully now you can see why I say that you need to do this with the frames and not the apertures, even though all we're going to be cutting is the apertures. Okay, so far so good. So I'm going to go OK, OK, Object Edit, and we're going to group that centre row. Now at this point that grouping is there to kind of keep that distance locked. So then we can go OK, back to multi-select, and this time we're going to select also our 2 vertical middles. We can go OK, and we can go Move, Align, and this time we're going to go for our vertical centre, like so. Okay, again, fair enough. We're going to go and do our vertical spacing. So now that we have got a fixed kind of set there. Now if we were to group this at this point, we wouldn't be able to necessarily be able to move our 4 corner points to where they need to go to. So for now I'm going to go OK, because we know that that's aligned and distributed right. OK again. I'm going to go to multi-select. I'm going to tap off everything so nothing is selected. And this time I'm going to select these bottom elements, go OK. Now all we're going to do in a line this time is we're going to align the bottom. So where we've got this line down the bottom, that's going to say that needs to drop down there. And we can go OK. Back to multi-select, tap off. And this time we're going to go and do the top 3. So we know that the spacing for our centre one is correct, but these 2 are both sitting above where we are. So again we're going to use that line to bottom to bring it down. Now if you found that was the other way around, then you would use top to bring them up. Just so that we have our spacing right, we're going to bring it down to bottom. And go OK. Back to multi-select, tap to deselect. Now we're going to select all the elements down that left hand edge, including that centre group. Go OK. And we're going to go Move, Align, and Left Align. So it's going to take that grid out to that left hand edge. We're going to go OK. And back to multi-select and deselect. Now this next one is going to be more tricky. The reason being, if I select these, you can see that bottom right hand edge is currently sticking past our centre point. So if we were going to use the right align, we're actually going to end up moving our centre block rather than actually moving that right hand bottom frame. So what we're going to want to do is, before we do any align, click off, go OK. We're going to go to Move, and we're going to drag this back in by using our left arrow so that it's past the point of this section here. And we're also going to do the same to our oval, just so that we know for a fact that it is left of that line. We'll go OK. Back to our multi-select so that we select our 3. Go OK. Move, Align, and this time we're going to go for line right, and that's going to move that out. So we can go OK, and we'll click off everything. So as we've now got that centre group, what we actually need to have is our apertures rather than having all the frames there, because we want to actually cut these through our background. So what you're going to do is actually break all of these apart using that same offset rule. Now you don't have to offset it in to offset it back out if you don't want to. It just means that when you do your colouring for your background, you're going to have a little bit of colour inside your frame, which I think will give it a bit more of a polished look anyway. So I'm going to go to Object Edit, I'm going to ungroup everything, and again click so that you only have one item selected. Now as luck would have it, this one's already a group, so we can ungroup that one, and we can do the same for all of our oval frames. We're going to go OK. So now we can delete everything that we don't want to cut. And we don't want the outer frame, we only want that inner aperture. So now we can do the same for this one. And we can do the same for the top one. Nearly. There we go. Outer. Then use your little arrow keys to help you get the right shape. So then we need to do that same process for our other frames too. Just be careful when you are changing between shapes. If you don't have a really steady hand, if you use that left and right arrow to select your shapes, you've got no risk of moving anything. So we're going to do our offset, 1 mil, OK. And we can go OK and delete that original shape. We're going to go back into Object Edit and ungroup. So using these two arrows here, just change so that we've got our outer selected, and we can delete that one. Now obviously this is going to take a little bit of time. So if you already wanted to have done this step before duplicating, that is absolutely fine too. Oh. Okay. You're not going to want to undo that, is it? No, it's not. So, what can you do? Object Edit, duplicate. Let's put another one in. Over here. So if you do make a mistake, we're going to do the same thing as what we did before. Now obviously you are not going to have that same point of reference for those frames, so you are going to have to use a little bit of ingenuity. So I'm going to select those two frames, move, align, right align, go OK, back to your multi-select, tap that one and that aperture there, go OK, and we're going to go to move, align, and then center. And that looks like I got that pretty spot on. So now we can go back and do our offset. OK. Object Edit, ungroup it, get to the outside and delete that. Okay. Now the other way you could do it is if you wanted to just use the aperture shape itself. So you could actually create a new shape and actually overlay it so that you actually have a duplicate there. But I think for the most part it's more accurate to do it this way, even if it feels like it's taking a bit longer. So, okay, delete the original, ungroup, delete. Now the other way you could go is if you did your -1 offset, then that would actually create a bit of a recess under your frame. Now that's perfectly okay to do with self-adhesive, so long as you are putting your paper in straight away. If you're preparing this frame in advance, however, then you would want to make sure that you keep that offset positive. And we're nearly there. Last one. Okay, so once you have all of those aligned on your mat, we're going to go select all, object edit and group. So then we know that that group is set up and aligned. If you're just deleting the outside shape while you're creating an offset, okay, so the designs that we put in are frames, which basically means that they've had that aperture subtracted from the outside shape. Okay, so it's essentially, in terms of what the machine sees, one shape. The reason we do the offset is so that we can actually divide those elements out, so that we can have just the aperture or just the outer. So if you wanted to create a photo, for instance, that you want to put into that frame, then you could just cut out the outside shape and not actually have to cut out that in aperture too. And that's why we use the offset. Then when you've done the offset, it groups it so that it keeps it as one shape. It doesn't redo that subtraction, which means that we can then just ungroup and play with it. So now that that is grouped, I'm going to go into move, and I'm going to get this red cross in the middle to line up with our sort of grey cross that we have on our mat. So then we know that our layer is going to be central. And that's looking pretty close there. So then that is central. I've got a piece of white card that I'm going to be adhering to my mat. Now, if you want to do some watercolor effects or anything that's going to get really kind of wet, then what I would advise is drawing that grid first with a watercolor pencil. Then, instead of cutting at that point, take it off your mat, do your watercolor, then pop it back on, and then cut out once your card is dry. That's a really important point as well. Make sure your card is dry before you're putting it in your machine, because if there's any residual dampness, you can find it's going to snag on the blade. So if you're getting something that looks like a pull, so I go back overhead. So if you've got something that looks like it's cutting like this, that means that your material's pulling too much. So it could be that there's some residual dampness in your card. You'll tend to see that more so on thicker card as well, because there's always a bit of dampness in there. So if ever you've done any sort of like work with UT and cardboard, you'll know what that's like. It's literally, yeah. You don't realise how much water is still in these things, even though you touch it and you think it's dry. Okay, so I'm planning on using some watercolour effects stamps rather than going wet and wet. So let's pop that in the machine. So if you're going to draw this with your watercolour pencil, you can pop that on to draw and then put your watercolour pencil into your universal pen holder. The 3D Thumbprints one does work better with pencils than the Brother one, so you'll find it much easier if you use theirs. There isn't a particular brand of watercolour pencil that works better than any other. They're all pretty much the same in terms of actually fitting in the machine. But for now, I'm going to go to cut. Now obviously you will find that although we've aligned that shape to the centre cross, there's always going to be a little bit of leeway either side, just because of where the actual 5x12 aligns on the mat. We're human at the end of the day. Chances of you getting it perfectly square and perfectly centred are pretty slim. And you're welcome, Michelle. Now, if you are creating this on canvas, you actually have the ability to set that spacing by a figure, which actually makes this job much easier. So, if I take this off the mat, yeah, just check it's cut, and we're going to pop that. Here's our background. Now the advantage of having such different frames on this is that you're going to be able to match these up pretty easily. If yours are more similar in terms of their proportions, then you are going to want to keep a note of which frames you use where, just to make your life a little easier. So if you have some like foil quill SVG files or any of those that are like designed specifically for drawing, you could draw those onto your background before you do that cutting step. Okay, so one mat sorted, and here's our background. So if I bring my notepad in, we're going to have our photos in these ones. We've got pattern, pattern and pattern, and solid, solid, solid is what we're aiming for. I'm going to be using some paper. So I'm going, basically anything where you've got a patterned paper collection and a matching card collection is going to be great for this project. So you don't have to use all the same card, and the really good news is you don't have to be that neat in your cutting because all the gluing is going to be done on the back. So let's see if I can find some pattern paper. There we go. So pattern paper, and I'm going to pull out some of the lighter colours because I want this to be quite spring-like. So I'm going to go for light green. It's also a good way of using up your offcuts, this project. And I'm going to go for the peach. And let's go for this one. I'm also going to take out a couple of sheets where we've got elements that we can fussy cut out. God blimey, time's rattling by. So what I will do is actually I'll make this part 1 and I'll do part 2 tomorrow. So that we've got our papers and just want to bear in mind those. Let's have a look at the card, because you don't want it to be too samey, but at the same point you don't want it to be really contrasting. So let's go for the pink, and then we've got let's go for the stronger green. That looks like quite a good combination. So just so you get a bit of a preview, and if I pop in, let's go for the pink because that's going to be nice and strong. So then you're going to have this background coloured, and then we're going to have our frames over the top. So we're going to be colouring this card so that our frames are going to pop. Yeah, I'm absolutely mad on Paper Boutique. I have quite a collection, and then I usually go and find some more when I do a typing. I'm like, oh, I forgot I had that. Top tips: Ferrero Rocher boxes fit it really well, or the Western boxes do an 8x8 box, which is perfect for them too. Or for if you just have an individual pad rather than having a collection, you can use an 8x8 card bag, and that's going to keep all your papers together. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been going through my collections and bagging them up, but the lovely days will now quite a lot of, so I'm going to swap that across to an 8x8 box and then use the card bags for another pad. But yes, I do have a bit of a thing for Paper Boutique. So what I would say is, when you're happy with the design, if it's something that you're going to want to use again, so at both the frame cutting stage and the aperture stage, then do use that save function so that you can use it again and again. So if, for example, you wanted to do a double page spread with the same layout, you could do that. You could flip the second one so that you actually have the alternate, which would look great. Or if you wanted to mix them all up again and do your alignment, you could do. So hopefully you've enjoyed that and you've found some new ways of using your machine, and also the designs that are in it, because they really don't get used enough. It's so easy to just go and download an SVG or design something new in Canvas that sometimes the designs that are built into the machine can kind of get forgotten. And it's nice to just be able to just hop on the machine and just pick one of the designs that are on it and just go from there. It is one of the major advantages of the ScanNCut over the Cricut or the Silhouette, is that ability that you don't have to use a computer at all if you don't want to. So I'm going to leave it there for now, and then tomorrow I will finish off putting this together. I want to show you some watercolor effect stamping, and then we can actually assemble it all in. The one thing I won't be showing is any photos, though, just because of all the rules and things that go with streaming. But I'm sure you can imagine photos in the spare slots. So take care for now, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 11.